Many people believe that success is determined by luck, talent, or background. However, one timeless truth has been proven again and again. A person's Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos all in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill wrote, "What you think true success begins when a person changes their mindset. Once you start seeing yourself as capable, valuable, and worthy of success, your actions begin to change. Confidence grows, opportunities appear, and life slowly transforms. In the end, you're fought one day, at a crowded railway station, a poor beggar spent his time asking travelers for money. Every morning, he sat near the platform, stretching out his hand to strangers and hoping someone would show him kindness. Most people ignored him, while others gave him only a few small coins. This daily routine had become his entire life, and he never imagined that one afternoon, he noticed a well-dressed businessman confidently walking through the station. The man looked successful and wealthy, wearing an expensive suit and carrying himself with confidence. The beggar immediately thought that this man would surely give him a large amount of money. However, instead of giving money, the businessman looked directly at him and asked an unexpected question. "Do you always take from others? Have you ever given anything to anyone?" The beggar was shocked. No one had ever asked him such a question before. Confused, he replied. The businessman smiled calmly and said, "If you believe you have nothing to give, then you also have no right to ask for anything. I am a businessman." And after saying those words, the businessman boarded his train and left. The beggar remained standing silently on the platform, deeply moved by what he had just heard. For the first time in his life, he began questioning himself and his future. The businessman's words planted a powerful idea in his mind. Perhaps success does not begin with receiving, but with learning how to give value first. After meeting the businessman, the beggar could not stop thinking about the strange conversation. The words, "If you want to receive, you must first give," echoed in his mind again and again. For many years, he had believed that he was helpless and had nothing valuable to offer the world. His entire life depended on the kindness of strangers. Yet for the first time, someone had challenged that belief. That night, he lay awake at the railway station, staring into the dark sky and thinking deeply. The businessman had not insulted him or treated him cruelly. Instead, he had spoken honestly and sincerely. Slowly, the beggar began to realize an important truth. People were not refusing to help him because they were heartless. For the next 2 days, the beggar stopped asking others for money. Instead, he spent his time observing the busy station and thinking carefully about what he could possibly give. He felt frustrated because he owned nothing. He had no education, no skills, and no money. But deep inside, he knew the businessman's words carried wisdom. On the third day, while sitting quietly near the railway tracks, he noticed a patch of colorful wildflowers growing nearby. Their beauty immediately caught his attention. As he looked at them, a new idea suddenly appeared in his mind. He thought, "What if I give these flowers to people whenever they give me money? Maybe even a small gift can make a difference." Excited by the idea, he carefully picked several flowers and returned to his usual place at the station. The next time someone handed him a coin, he smiled warmly and offered them a flower in return. To his surprise, the person accepted it happily. Some people even smiled back and thanked him. As time passed, something incredible began to happen. More travelers stopped to give him money, and many seemed genuinely happy to receive a flower. Eventually, the beggar understood a life-changing lesson. People appreciate value, no matter how small it may seem. By giving something first, he changed not only the way others saw him, but also the way he saw himself. As the days passed, the beggar's small idea began creating a huge change in his life. Every day, he picked fresh wildflowers near the railway tracks and offered them to passengers in exchange for coins. What began as a simple experiment soon became something much more meaningful. People no longer gave him money only out of pity. They smiled, warmly accepted the flowers, and appreciated his kindness. The beggar carefully observed the reactions of the travelers. He noticed that whenever he had flowers to offer, people seemed happier to stop and help him. Some passengers even looked forward to receiving a flower before boarding their trains. However, on days when he ran out of flowers, fewer people gave him money. This helped him realize an important truth. People naturally value exchange. Even a small gift can make someone feel appreciated and happy. One afternoon, While handing flowers to passengers, he saw the businessman again sitting on a train at the station. Excited and grateful, the former beggar confidently approached him. This time, instead of simply asking for money, he proudly said, "Sir, today I have something to offer you. If you give me money, I will give you flowers in return." The businessman smiled, handed him some cash, and accepted the flowers. Then he said something that changed the man's life forever. "Now you are no longer just a beggar. You have become a businessman because you understand the value of exchange." Those words deeply touched his heart. As the train slowly departed, he stood silently on the platform, thinking about what the businessman had said. For the first time, he no longer saw himself as weak or helpless. He realized that he was capable of creating value and earning respect through his own efforts. At that moment, a powerful transformation happened inside him. He understood that success does not begin with money or status. It begins when a person changes the way they see themselves and starts believing in their own value. After his conversation with the businessman, the former beggar began to see his life from a completely different perspective. The words, "You are no longer a beggar, you are a businessman," echoed in his mind every day. At first, he could hardly believe it. How could a poor man who once survived on charity suddenly be called a businessman? But the more he thought about those words, the more he understood their deeper meaning. He realized that people were no longer giving him money because they felt sorry for him. They were paying for the value he provided. Even though the flowers were simple and inexpensive, they carried beauty, kindness, and appreciation. For the first time in his life, he felt useful. He understood that success is not about how much money a person has, but about the value they create for others. This realization filled him with confidence and hope. Instead of sitting at the railway station waiting for sympathy, he decided to completely change his future. He left the station and began working hard to build a real flower business. Every morning, he bought fresh flowers, arranged them carefully, and sold them honestly to customers. Although the beginning was difficult, he no longer felt ashamed of himself. He now believed that he was capable of achieving more. As the months passed, his business slowly grew. His positive attitude and determination attracted loyal customers. People admired his kindness and hardworking spirit. Day by day, his life improved because his mindset had changed. He no longer saw himself as poor or helpless. Instead, he saw himself as a person with purpose and potential. 6 months later, fate brought him back to the same railway station where his transformation had begun. This time, he arrived wearing clean and elegant clothes, carrying himself with confidence. By coincidence, he met the businessman again. The businessman was astonished. Smiling proudly, the former beggar explained that he now owned a successful flower shop and was traveling to expand his business even further. He sincerely thanked the businessman and said, "That day, you taught me one of the greatest lessons of my life." At that moment, the two men shook hands again, not as a beggar and a businessman, but as equals connected by wisdom, growth, and mutual respect. The story of the former beggar teaches us a profound lesson about life and personal growth. In the beginning, he saw himself as weak, poor, and dependent on others. Because of this mindset, he believed begging was the only way to survive. However, everything changed when he learned an important truth. People only receive value after they learn to value themselves. The businessman's words completely changed the way he saw himself. Once he started giving flowers in exchange for money, he realized that he was no longer living on pity. Instead, he was creating a simple exchange that brought joy to others. That small action changed his life completely. The most important transformation did not happen in his pocket, but in his mindset. He stopped calling himself a beggar and began seeing himself as someone capable of success. This new belief gave him the courage to work harder, take risks, and build a better life. His success came from changing the way he viewed himself. This lesson applies to everyone. Many people limit themselves because they focus too much on their weaknesses or difficult circumstances. They believe they are not talented enough, rich enough, or lucky enough to succeed. But true success begins when a person recognizes their own potential and believes they can grow beyond their current situation. A positive mindset can completely transform a person's future. When you believe in yourself, you become willing to learn, improve, and create more opportunities. Even small actions can lead to great changes over time. Just as the flowers changed the beggar's life, a simple change in thinking can open the door to new opportunities. In the end, life is shaped by the way we think. If we continue to see ourselves as powerless, we will remain trapped. But if we choose to believe in our abilities and focus on what we can offer to others, we can achieve far more than we ever imagined. 6 months after leaving the railway station, the former beggar's life had completely changed. The man who once sat on the cold platform asking strangers for coins had become a confident businessman with a successful flower shop. His appearance, attitude, and future were no longer controlled by poverty or hopelessness. Instead, they were shaped by determination and self-respect. One day, during a business trip, he returned to the same railway station where everything had begun. As he walked through the crowded platform in clean and elegant clothes, he noticed a familiar face. It was the businessman who had once refused to give him money and challenged him with a life-changing question. At first, the businessman could hardly recognize him. The transformation was so incredible that he stared at him in surprise. Then the former beggar smiled warmly and reminded him of their previous meeting. Suddenly, the businessman remembered the poor man who had once begged at the station. Curious and amazed, the businessman asked him what had caused such a remarkable change. The flower seller explained that the lesson he learned that day had completely transformed his mindset. He realized that people respect those who create value and contribute something meaningful. Instead of seeing himself as helpless, he began believing in his own potential. He shared that his flower business had grown steadily because he worked hard and treated customers with kindness and respect. More importantly, he explained that the greatest transformation had happened in his mind. Before boarding their trains, the two men shook hands again as equals. The former beggar sincerely thanked the businessman and said, "You taught me that life changes when we change the way we see ourselves." The story of the beggar and the businessman leaves behind a meaningful lesson about life, success, and self-confidence. At the heart of the story is one powerful truth: the way we think about ourselves shapes the direction of our lives. A person who constantly believes they are weak, unlucky, or incapable will often remain trapped in fear and limitations. In contrast, someone who recognizes their inner value and potential can overcome even the hardest circumstances. The beggar's transformation did not begin when he earned more money. It began the moment he changed his mindset. Once he understood the importance of bringing value to others, he no longer saw himself as a helpless man waiting for sympathy. He began seeing himself as someone who could contribute, create opportunities, and build a better future through his own efforts. This lesson applies to everyone, regardless of age, background, or situation. Many people spend their entire lives doubting themselves because they focus too much on their problems. They compare themselves to others and believe success belongs only to a lucky or talented few. However, true success often begins with small changes in thinking. When a person develops confidence, takes responsibility, and continues improving themselves, new opportunities begin to appear. The story also teaches that every person has something valuable to offer. It does not always have to be money or special talent. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness, effort, or creativity can create positive change. What matters most is the willingness to contribute instead of only waiting to receive. In the end, our future is greatly influenced by our thoughts and actions. If we choose to believe in ourselves and continue growing, we can achieve far more than we imagine. Life changes when our mindset changes. As the story reminds us, greatness is not determined by where we begin, but by how we see ourselves and the courage we have to rise above our limitations.